Welcome to Live the Dream with yours truly, Marty Kaiser. Buckle up and let's get started. Happy hurricane season. This is Marty Kaiser with my weekly Real Estate Tidbits podcast. Hope everyone's doing well and the storms didn't prove too overwhelming for you. We were very lucky in Orlando. One great thing about living in Central Florida is when we have these hurricanes, we seem to be pretty much positioned where it's unusual for us to have dramatic damage. Prayers and thoughts are out to our fellow Floridians that are on the Gulf Coast and in North Florida. They suffered overwhelming damage, and also many of the folks in the Carolinas had a lot of damage, especially in Asheville. And I know a lot of Floridians have purchased vacation properties in the past in the Asheville and surrounding areas. One thing that's always been on my mind, and if anybody wants to give feedback on this, feel free to provide that, is it's clear that these storms are getting worse in intensity and worse in frequency. We've had several major hurricanes over the past few years, and this particular season, we were forecast to have a lot higher number of hurricanes and storm-related weather. So a couple things seem to be somewhat problematic. Most of these major hurricanes are hitting the Gulf Coast and then heading up north, so similar areas are suffering the most damage. And what's happening is the areas that are suffering the most damage, of course, their losses are extensive. Insurance becomes even more expensive, not only for those folks, but it has a residual effect on other people in the state of Florida. And ultimately, a lot of these folks rebuild, of course, which is time-consuming and expensive. And then in many cases, they're having repeat storms within a year or two of the initial storms, and they're suffering similar or more damage. I guess food for thought is maybe it's time for the citizens and the local government to employ a little bit more logic and maybe not rebuild in these areas. I know people feel, well, this is the United States, and if I own property, I'm going to rebuild. Nobody's going to tell me what to do. But on the flip side, if these storms are getting worse, which is obvious they are throughout the United States, but especially the hurricanes in Florida, and similar areas are suffering devastating damage, why keep repeating the same mistakes? Possibly take your insurance money and rebuild your house somewhere else. I know people want to be at or near the ocean, but it's increasingly not practical from a safety and an insurance perspective. Just thought I'd mention that because I've always had the logic that if you keep repeating behavior and the behavior's not working, you're going to get the same result. And I think that's increasingly true with rebuilding in these devastated areas, that at some point somebody's got to be the leader and say, this is just a losing strategy and we need to refocus. I think in general we've overbuilt by the water, and obviously they're in high demand, and developers love to sell and build property there because they get a tremendous return on their investment. But it's not in the best interest of our fellow folks that live in the state, and especially these folks that reside on the water. Just thought I'd mention that. To kind of switch gears for a second, I'm going to cover a few different topics today. The Major League Baseball playoffs are starting today, for those of you that are baseball fans. And the first round are what they call the wild card games. So I believe they have 4 games today that start in the afternoon. Baseball has increasingly become very competitive where there's no overwhelming favorite. I think a lot of the fans would love to see the Los Angeles Dodgers play against the New York Yankees in the World Series. The reason I say that is a couple reasons. Of course, they're 2 of the big metropolitan hubs, so they have a lot of followers throughout the United States. But more importantly, from a sports perspective, They have arguably the two best players in the game, and those two players are overwhelmingly going to be the most valuable players of 2024. You have Aaron Judge for the New York Yankees, who arguably had the best year of anyone in the past 75 years in Major League Baseball. And then you have Shohei Ohtani, who is a remarkable player. As you probably know, he's a two-way player, which means he's a phenomenal pitcher and a phenomenal hitter. He tore out his shoulder last year and elbow, so he had to have major Tommy John surgery, so he's not pitching this year. He's just hitting. But he had a phenomenal year, too. He had a great average. He had 50-plus home runs, and he had 59 stolen bases. He's the first player in Major League history to have 50 home runs and 50 stolen bases in the same year. So I think a lot of sports fans would love to see these two gentlemen oppose themselves and watch the fireworks. Changing courses again, I thought something that came to mind are real estate reality shows. I don't know how many people watch these. There's a whole host of them. Some range out of New York, some range out of California. They now have them emanating in Utah. They also have these buy and flip shows. So they have a lot of content in these shows. A couple things that I noted, because I actually have a daughter who's in the entertainment business and has been a principal in producing some of these real estate shows, along with other shows that she's participated in. And of course, these shows are spliced. They try to put the most entertaining and controversial context and content on TV. They don't really have many similarities to most of Orlando properties from a couple of standpoints. When you watch the New York show, which is about the Ryan Serhant company, the focus of a lot of those shows is kind of the interesting behavior of some of the agents. The agents kind of come across as somewhat arrogant and very self-assured. At the same time, when they do show open houses and things of that nature, they're more focused on how much money is spent on these gatherings, the different real estate brokers that attend these. They're more of a social and networking function, and they're quite costly. You see those from time to time in the Orlando market, but not with the cost or regularity that they show those in New York. By the same token, they have similar characteristics to the California shows. Those shows emanate from Southern California, and they're called the Real Estate Millionaires, I think, of Los Angeles, something like that. They have Josh Altman and a couple other big-time brokers on that show. And again, they have these elaborate brokers' opens and gatherings, along with these agents who, again, are not shy about patting themselves on the back frequently. What's interesting to me is, and as we all know, even though real estate in the Orlando market has gone up a lot, it still pales in comparison to real estate values in the Northeast and in California. For example, if you watch the New York show, you'll frequently find condominiums that will range maybe from $5 to $25 million, depending on the age of the property, if it's a penthouse, how many stories the building has, things of that nature. In California, the homes that you see focused on this particular show, $5 million is a low price. They've gone as high as $50 million. And then, of course, you have to deal with mudslides, flooding, earthquakes. So they kind of make hurricanes seem like child's play in comparison. They are somewhat entertaining, and I do find, they're interesting to watch, but I don't think they have a lot of direct correlation to the way that we conduct real estate in the Orlando market. I did want to mention a new listing that we're going to be activating this coming Friday. It's in a phenomenal location. It's in the Dr. Phillips area. It's located right near Restaurant Row, but it's in a newer community that's just set off by a few blocks of Turkey Lake and Sandhill Trace. So you get two unique aspects. You get the convenience of being right in the middle of everything. You're within walking distance of Whole Foods. But at the same time, this property is set off far enough where you have almost no through traffic. It's like you're in your little enclave. You would think you were almost out in the country, but you're close in. It's a contemporary community where they have about 75% of single-family homes and about 25% of townhomes. The properties themselves are very contemporary, very aesthetically pleasing. The single-family homes in that area range from close to $1 million, and then they exceed that. It depends on the square footage of the properties and whether they're on water or not. The townhomes in that community tend to range from approximately $550 to about the upper sixes. And they're very attractive units, have been built with a proper flow in mind, quality upgrades, low maintenance, etc. The property that we're going to be putting on the market, it was built in 2020. It's a 3-bedroom, 2.5 bath. It's approximately 1,650 feet of living. All top quality upgrades, really nice covered porch, rear entry 2-car garage, upgraded flooring throughout the home. This particular owner has just taken impeccable care of the home. The furnishings are negotiable. He's done a phenomenal job. It just has a phenomenal ambiance and flow to the property. For people that like the seller's taste in furniture, everything goes perfectly. The property is going to go on the market for $580,000. The HOA fees are extremely reasonable in there, because besides getting your landscaping taken care of, it's gated. They also have a community pool, and they have a clubhouse you can utilize for social gatherings. So you get a lot of bang for your buck in this area, and I think you'll be very impressed and pleased by it. So this property will go on the market on Friday. If you'd like to schedule a private viewing or have any questions, you can reach me at 407-595-9700, or my email address is marty@floridasells.com. I did want to mention a little bit, too. You're probably aware that the Federal Reserve recently lowered their lending rate to their banks, and so that usually has a trickle-down effect to mortgage rates. We've started to see a little downward trend in mortgages, and right now, with most lenders who are offering competitive rates, you're going to be looking at rates at anywhere from probably 5 7/8 to 6 1/4, depending on the lender and what, if any, upfront fees they have, etc. But they've come down somewhat, because about a year and a half ago, or maybe even less than that, they had gone up to 8%. It's expected that in 2025, the Fed's going to lower their rates 4 or 5 times, and that's going to have a corresponding effect on mortgage rates. I project that by the last quarter of 2025, interest rates should be around the 5% mark. The thing that I'm continually stressing to my customers, however, is I believe that now is the optimal time to purchase rather than waiting next year. Not only have the rates come down a little bit right now, but prices still are pretty much level. I strongly believe that as the word gets out about interest rates and all the people that have been waiting to buy because the interest rates were higher, you're going to see a massive entry into the purchase aspect of real estate in 2025. Concurrently, what that's going to create is you're going to have more demand than supply, and it's going to fuel another price increase in properties. So I fully believe that you're going to see somewhat significant price increases in 2025. So to me, it's a much better investment, and it's much more cost-effective for someone that plans on purchasing in 2025 to try to start doing it the last quarter of 2024, because you're going to have less competition for your property. You're hopefully not going to enter into bidding wars. You're hopefully not going to lose out on your dream property. And even though interest rates are a little bit higher right now than I'm projecting they'll be by the end of 2025, if the spread is significant enough, you can certainly refinance. And the combination of buying at a lesser price, getting less competition, and then refinancing is going to be far more cost-effective for you rather than waiting until the competition increases and the prices go up. It's just food for thought. I'd love to share more of my opinions with you. I can do it over the phone, or I can do it in person in writing. But I can definitely tell you, I've been through all the cyclical things in real estate over the past 20 years, and I can pretty much predict where we're heading. And so my job, regardless of who my potential customer is to give them the best advice based on my research, based on my experience, and based on my analysis. And I don't give opinions to customers lightly. So if I give you an opinion, it's more often pretty accurate. So please get a hold of me. I'd love to chat with you and share some more insights with you. And last but not least, for those of you that listen to this podcast today, we're going to have our vice presidential debate this evening between J.D. Vance and Tim Walz. The vice presidential debates typically don't get as much fanfare or as much viewership, but this one may be interesting. We've got two relatively unknown people from a national basis, and it should be interesting on how they conduct themselves, and if you think that one of the candidates would be better than another if they had to take over as president should some tragedy happen to the sitting president. That's the one thing that I always try to take when I'm evaluating parties and who's running, is not only the president obviously is more important, but especially if you have an older president, like currently we have Joe Biden, and if Donald Trump gets elected, he's going to be older than Joe Biden is now by the time he finishes office. And, you know, if you just look at the characteristics, Joe Biden was criticized because he's older and because he tends to be on the thin side, and people associate that with frailty. On the other side, Donald Trump is way heavier, and he appears to me to be not in the best health. He kind of tells people how he loves fast food and drinks a ton of sodas every day, doesn't exercise, has a lot of stress, I can tell you that. I couldn't deal with his stress. Besides running for president, he's been indicted on multiple jurisdictions. He's being sued on multiple things. So that's, regardless of whether you think these lawsuits are fictitious or they should proceed against him, that's a lot of stress for anybody to deal with. So I, as a citizen, would be very concerned about his future health prospects. So that's why I'm going to carefully listen to J.D. Vance tonight and see if what he says gives me confidence or pause for concern. So anyway, that's all for today. I'd love to hear from you. We did get some great questions that just came in today to me, so I didn't have enough time to prepare a good answer to those questions, so I'm going to go over those on my next episode. Our next episode will be posted this coming Friday, and our library of podcasts are on there if you had missed any of our podcasts and want to rehear anything. So that's all for today. Everybody be safe. Have a great day, and we'll talk soon. Marty Kaiser out.